how y'all doing? Welcome to 3Con Commentaries. This is your boy Mongo Slade, and today we're going to talk about only putting interesting people on TV. One of the things that I've always said is a hindrance to wrestling is that they don't bring interesting people onto TV. This is why they bring in celebrities and movie stars and rappers and all that type of stuff, because these people are actors, not just because these people are known to a mainstream audience, but these people are actually interesting when you take them from their world and put them into the wrestling world. It's like I said, it's an isekai situation where you fall in. It's like John Carter from Mars. It's like a guy from Earth gets shipped to Mars and has to learn this different language and these different systems and the different governments and relationships, how these things work. It's a similar thing when you take a musician and you put him in wrestling. Now you have to see how he operates within the wrestling sphere. Same thing when you bring like another athlete in. How does another athlete and his attitude and his personality fit the wrestling world? What part of it fits? And this is what I want to talk about today, because it seems that people are starting to get it. At least two people understand it now. First, we're going to read a quote from Darby Allin that he talks about small-minded people in the wrestling business. And then another, we're going to talk about Apollo Crews in so much as he would get asked a question about John Cena that he couldn't really answer. So let's read the Darby Allin question first. He said, he says, "The biggest advice I can give to anyone entering wrestling is to bring your outside world into wrestling, because there are so many people who only know wrestling and it gets so boring. It's like, tell me who you are and what you're about." And they'll say, "I grew up loving professional wrestling. It's all I ever wanted. It's my dream." That is so generic that you don't bring anything to the table. There's a whole world out there, and so many are small-minded in wrestling. That's not even funny. And you know what? It's kind of like that in the music business too. Like, you can be a very interesting musician, and I think people are far more likely to get involved with people who they feel to be are interesting. And that's another thing when it comes to wrestling. Darby Allin is, he doesn't say a lot of things, period. He definitely doesn't say a lot of things that I think are considerably smart. But this is very intelligent. This is somebody who is saying, hey, look, you have to be able to connect with different groups of people. You have to be able to do different things. You have to have different interests. And if you have different interests, then you can connect with certain people on those interests. Like when Xavier Woods started doing the Final Fantasy thing with the trombone period, even being out there because, he was a band student or whatever. That makes people, not only does it open you up for people to be able to relate to you, but it also tells people more about your character. It tells more people about who you are so that they can describe you to someone else. So this is the second quote. It's going to be from Apollo Crews. And this is actually something that is very interesting. Very interesting, because Apollo Crews has been in WWE for years. But this maybe explains why he was in WWE for years doing nothing. Apollo Crews says, quote, "When I got to the main roster, John Cena was still working, and he would always pull me aside and be like, 'Who is Apollo Crews?' At the time, I'm like the most generic wrestler, so I'm embarrassing when I think about it, and I'm like, I'm this guy. I work hard," and he's like, everybody works hard, but who are you? I couldn't answer to save my life, and it literally took me 6 years. I'm trying to figure out who is Apollo Crews, and I don't know. I felt so embarrassed to the point where I'd avoid having conversations with him, because I know he's going to ask me again today, and I don't have an answer for him. You got John Cena asking you these questions, and I'm sitting here like I can't come up with an answer. It's pretty ridiculous. I realized it's not always about how good you are in the ring. It's like, what drives this person? Who are you? That is very important. It is incredibly important for you to know who you are. Now, that is so important, in fact, that, numerous people have talked about it. A lot of people have been saying, like, it's a character thing. When you're building a character, like, I'm a writer, so when you build characters, you don't just look at what cool superpowers or whatever you can give them. You have to look at, how would you put this character in this situation? How would they respond? Take the situation where, the Spider-Man situation, where you got the Green Goblin on one hand has a bus full of people. On the other hand, he's got Mary Jane Watson, right? And you can't save them both. You know, theoretically, you can't save them both. So who are you going to save? You know, different characters would respond differently. A villain would respond differently from a hero, and then a different kind of hero will respond differently from a different other kind of hero, because they all have different capabilities. For instance, Superman can save them both, because Superman can move fast enough to catch the bus and catch Mary Jane at the same time. You know, so it's not much of a situation for Superman to be in. So it's different. Batman, who has no superhuman strength, he may, look at the situation and say, I got to save the bus full of people, and then may sacrifice that one person. But of course, most heroes are going to try to save both, because they're going to try to prove that you can save both. That's the general idea. And I believe Spider-Man actually does save both. It's very close. But, you have these situations, and some people have, it's like the old, one of those old conundrums that you often see in cop shows, where the bad guy grabs a hostage and puts a gun to their head. Put the gun down. Put it down, or I'm going to shoot. And then you have some heroes who are, the gunslinger. He's just so good at shooting that he's going to shoot anyway and shoot the guy in the head before the guy can kill the hostage. Then you have the other people who are a little bit more skittish. They put their gun down, put their hands up, and then they give the bad guy control, or something like that. So that's what character is. That's character, decision making. It's not attributes. It's not what you can do. It is who you are. What decisions do you make? That is a big thing. So I also want to play a clip from Al Snow. So let's talk about this. Comes from WrestleZone. He did a talk with WrestleZone, but this is only like a minute. But I'm not going to play the whole clip. I'm just going to play a little bit so that he can further bolster what I'm saying here. So
all the major stars of wrestling are people that you could describe to your friends and family in a sentence or less.
Right.
You got to watch his show. You got to watch Raw with me. There's this guy. He's A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah.
The second a wrestler develops that's the key that unlocks, all of their success, is their ability to be described to anyone, anywhere. And, and a wrestler needs to understand selling is not acting like they're hurt. Okay. The art of selling, truly selling, is to sell, to get an audience to buy, convince someone who's watching you that what just happened to you didn't just only hurt, but that it may lead you to lose the match. Mm-hmm. And then the person doing the move is also conversely selling the idea that they're using the move to potentially beat you and bring themselves closer to winning the match. That.
So they see, I ran it a little longer than I wanted to, because I wanted to look at the selling part, because that is the decision making, right? When you're doing a move, right? That's a decision. Why would you use this particular move when there's hundreds of millions of other moves? Why a power bomb rather than a power driver? Why a DDT rather than a power bomb? Those are types of, and different characters would make different decisions, right? That's what I was just saying. It's like different characters have different move sets. They have different decision making due to their physical limitations, mental limitations, whatever. This is all character building stuff. When you read a comic book or when you watch wrestling, you get a lot of that good meaty character building. And people miss out on it because they're looking at move sets, or they're trying to see, well, he's a good promo or whatever. Sometimes a guy can be good just by how he puts his matches together. He could put his matches together and they can be really good. Or he could put matches together and it could be shit. How you place, look at Brock Lesnar, for instance. Brock Lesnar can have a whole match in 4 minutes. That's incredible talent. To be able to tell a full story in 4 minutes, to be able to have great matches in less than 10, especially in this audience where these people, especially these people on the internet, they think championship matches are supposed to be 40 minutes because that's what they do in New Japan. It's like, no, it's not necessary. It depends on who you are and the situation that you're in. Brock Lesnar is the kind of character that it doesn't make sense for him to go 40 minutes with anybody. It shouldn't take Brock Lesnar 40 minutes to beat you, right? And if you're going to beat him, it probably is not going to take 40 minutes, you know? But you have these people who get used to these exhibitions where people are just kind of doing everything that's in their repertoire. And that's what they think wrestling is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a simulated fight. And that's really what Brock tries to do. He tries to do simulated fight, you know? And sometimes that just means he goes over in 3 minutes, you know? Because in a real fight, you probably would go over in 3 minutes. But he still finds a way to make it creative, where you can do things like what he did with him in his match with Rey Mysterio, which is one of my favorite Rey Mysterio matches, and I love Rey Mysterio. You know, Rey Mysterio is on my top 10 list. So you have these kinds of abilities to put things together. A Brock Lesnar match is going to look very different from a Bret Hart match. It's going to look very different from a Randy Savage match. It's going to look very different from a Ricky Steamboat match. It's going to look different. And it should look different, and it should feel different. And I think that sometimes when people say like things like, they say like, well, in NXT, everything is coming across as very cookie cutter. That's because everybody has to learn the same structure. And then once you learn the same structure, you start to be able to do whatever you need within that structure. So, but that's comic books too. Like you have to build the world. You know, once you build the world, then you have to have people operating inside the world. Because that's how you define what the heroes are and what the villains are. I said this before about ECW. You know, ECW is a world where there were no rules, right? There was no countouts, no disqualifications. So simply pulling out a pair of brass knuckles and hitting a guy with it, it's not going to get you the same amount of heat as it would in a very structured environment like Mid-South wrestling. Like in Mid-South, where there was very judicious, very bureaucratic, where there was always commissions and that need to make a decision, or there would be referees who would come in and overrule another referee or something like that. You wouldn't be able to just get away. You would hit somebody with some brass knuckles, it would get you heat from the audience. They'd be like, boo, you cheated. In ECW, it's different because the baby faces were hitting people with chairs. You know, Rob Van Dam would be the first person to introduce a chair into a match, and he'd be the baby face. You know? But so you had to make a different decision. You had to make different decisions on how to become a heel in a match with Rob Van Dam, because he's going to be the first one to use the weapon. He can't get counted out. He can't get disqualified. He's also going to have outside help. That's another thing that if you look at ECW and you try to look at it from a strictly concepts of good and evil, you look at some of the baby faces, they'll be the first ones to cheat. Hell, they cheat more than the supposed bad guys do. Like I just said, Rob Van Dam would almost always be the first one to introduce a chair. Almost always the only one to have outside help. And he's the biggest baby face in the company. So how do you be a heel in that situation? You have to be creative. You have to come out and think of it. You have to build within that world. And then people say, well, it's cookie cutter. Rob Van Dam almost had pretty much the same match with everybody. Rob Van Dam had exhibitions. He's going to go out there. He's going to do the Van Daminator, the Van Terminator. Well, when he introduced the Van Terminator, he didn't do it in every match. I shouldn't say that. But the Van Daminator, he's going to do hit the Rolling Thunder. He's going to do, you know, almost all of his chair gimmicks. He's going to do all that stuff. The Rolling Thunder on the chair, split leg moonsault on the chair. He's going to do all that stuff. But how he puts it together depends on his opponent, you know? So that's really what I wanted to talk about. And it's also just something that you bring in your outside personality, you know, because sometimes you can bring in your outside personality into this thing and it fleshes you out. But characters in your decision making, do you decide to bring in your outside personality or not? You know, sometimes people do. And when they do, they may get over a lot faster. They may get over a lot interesting than when you have these cookie cutter creator wrestlers who, it's my dream. And I 100% agree with Darby Allin. That whole "it's my dream" shit. I'm so sick of hearing that. I'm tired of that. And that's the thing that really kind of kills me about NXT. It's like, it's my dream. I always wanted to be a pro wrestler. Like, fuck. It almost make me wish that there was a day of like the Double J's where I'm going to use the wrestling business to further my music career. Because it's like I'm tired of hearing about people whose dreams were to be a wrestler. I know it's hard. It better be your dream if you're out there doing it. But if you look at somebody like a rapper, like Cameron, right? Cameron was a rapper that hated rap. He would always say, you know, I hate rapping. I wanted to be a ball player. Like, that's a lot of people. That's something that a lot of people could gravitate towards, because there were so many black dudes in the hood who wanted to be ball players and they didn't make it, you know. But he was like, I wanted to be a ball player. You know, injuries or whatever changed that. He would use that in his lyrics, and he would, you know, often say he hated rap, or I'm not a rapper, I'm a hustler. That's something you also hear when it comes to rappers, you know. So it's the same thing. Musicians, you know, wrestlers, entertainers, or whatever. People try to bring in their outside interests to help inform the audience of what their character is and help with the decision making of their characters and their personalities. All right. So thank you guys for listening. Like this video, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.